Cold War soldiers didn't have the luxury of modern sleeping bags or ultralight insulation. Temperatures in Siberia, the Arctic Circle, and mountain fronts routinely dropped to levels that could kill an unprepared soldier in hours, not days. Yet among NATO and Warsaw Pact troops, one particular liner earned a reputation so strong that veterans decades later still talk about it with almost unbelievable respect. For the next minute, stay with me, because this isn't about a piece of fancy gear. It's about a layer designed during one of the harshest eras of military field testing. One that didn't rely on cutting-edge materials or high technology. It was a Cold War liner that held heat so effectively that infantrymen, pilots and reconnaissance teams swore they could survive nights far below freezing without a standard blanket. This forgotten piece of kit delivered performance modern outdoor companies still try to imitate today. How Cold War engineers created a liner that trapped heat more effectively than wool. During the 1950s and 60s, both NATO and Soviet forces demanded equipment that could keep troops alive in hostile winter conditions without adding weight. Standard blankets were bulky and became useless when wet. Wool was reliable but slow to dry and heavy in the field. That pushed military designers to rethink insulation. One of the most successful answers was the quilted sleeping bag liner made of layered cotton and nylon, with a scrim of air-trapping batting inside. The genius behind it wasn't the fabric itself, but the way the layers were stitched. Rows of tight quilting created hundreds of tiny chambers that prevented heat from escaping. Unlike wool, which released warmth gradually, the liner's trapped air pockets formed a stable thermal barrier that kept core body temperature from dropping during long, motionless hours. Around the world, militaries took note of this innovative liner, and, well, they began to adopt it in their own ways. Its performance in the field spoke for itself: reliable warmth, lighter weight, and honestly, a level of practicality that was hard to ignore. As armies tested it in all sorts of climates and conditions, it really set a new standard for soldier comfort and survival. The United States, Britain and the Soviet Union each produced their own variants, but the principle remained consistent: a liner that relied on trapped air, not thick padding. This simple idea, became the backbone of cold weather gear for millions of soldiers. Soldiers quickly discovered that the liner retained heat, even when damp, something blankets of the era struggled with. Whether in foxholes, aircraft cabins at high altitude, or frozen patrol routes, this liner proved itself over and over again, making a real difference when it mattered most. Now, let's talk about the advantages this liner had over traditional blankets. You see, it wasn't just about keeping warm. It was about how effectively and reliably warmth could be maintained, especially in harsh conditions. Traditional blankets had their place, of course, but this liner really set a new standard for insulation in the field. So, why did this liner outperform traditional blankets in freezing temperatures? Well, the key advantage was something called controlled loft. Unlike blankets, which depend on material density to insulate, making them heavier as they get warmer, the liner used its loft to trap air and provide warmth without all that extra weight. It was honestly a clever bit of engineering. The real secret, though, was in the stability of its small thermal pockets. These pockets couldn't shift or flatten, so even under pressure, like when you were sleeping on uneven ground, the liner kept its insulation. Blankets, on the other hand, would compress under weight and lose their heat-trapping ability. That's what made the liner such a game-changer for soldiers in the field. In field conditions, this difference mattered. You know, when it came to performance in extreme conditions, even the smallest design choices could make a huge difference for soldiers out in the field. Military trial reports from early NATO Arctic training programs note that the liners maintained workable insulation levels even after hours of condensation build-up. Wind also mattered. Standard blankets leaked heat rapidly in exposed positions because air moved freely through the fibres. The new liner used tightly woven nylon on the outside, which slowed air exchange and kept warmth inside, even when the wind was cutting across the tundra or mountain passes. The liner wasn't just for sleeping, you know. Cold War troops found all sorts of uses for it in the field. It served as an emergency blanket, a makeshift parka, or even a ground mat to keep the cold out. Its versatility really made it an essential bit of kit for soldiers facing unpredictable weather and harsh conditions. How Cold War troops used the liner to survive brutal winter conditions. The liner wasn't used alone. Troops layered it inside a thinner sleeping bag, inside parkas, under coats, or even wrapped around torsos during long static operations. Reconnaissance teams in the Scandinavian mountains sometimes used two liners stitched together, creating a makeshift sleeping bag that, well, actually rivaled much heavier gear. Pilots flying at high altitude carried compact versions for emergencies. There are, you know, quite a few remarkable survival stories tied to these liners. In some cases, soldiers credit their lives to the simple ingenuity of such equipment, proving that sometimes the most basic solutions are the most effective. The most telling detail comes from Warsaw Pact Mountain units, who reported sleeping directly on snow with a liner beneath and one above, surviving temperatures that would have required far bulkier gear. The controlled heat retention allowed them to rest without overheating, soaking the liner, or waking up chilled. That balance made the liner essential for missions where moving silently and staying light were more important than comfort. These same design choices, you know, still have value today. Modern survivalists and outdoor enthusiasts often rely on similar principles, choosing gear that keeps them warm without weighing them down or making too much noise. The lessons from the past, honestly, continue to shape how we prepare for the unknown. How a survivalist today can apply Cold War liner principles in the real world. If you're building a cold weather kit today, the Cold War liner teaches an important lesson. Insulation depends on stable air pockets, not thickness. A modern equivalent would be, well, a quilted liner or poncho liner with consistent stitching and a down-proof outer shell. To apply the principle directly, start with a lightweight tarp or waterproof shell to block wind. Then layer beneath it a quilted liner that holds its loft, even when compressed. Now, when it comes to advanced survival techniques, the key is always adapting your resources to the environment and honestly understanding the fundamentals of insulation and protection from the elements. So, avoid overpacking heavy blankets, as tempting as it might be. In survival shelters, place your liner under and over your body, so the lower layer prevents conductive heat loss into the ground. This actually mimics the Cold War strategy of pairing two liners. For long-term field setups, such as off-grid cabins or winter camps, you can even, replicate the thermal principle with homemade liners. Now, let's talk a bit about homemade liners and emergency bedrolls. These simple yet effective solutions can make a world of difference when you're facing harsh conditions out in the field, or even just preparing for an unexpected cold snap. Use tightly stitched quilting over a layer of batting, making sure the pattern forces air into fixed pockets. This prevents heat loss through convection and works especially well in damp climates. A practical example is building an emergency winter bedroll. Just fold a poncho liner inside a waterproof cover, compress it tightly and secure it with cordage. It's a straightforward method, but it really can save you from the cold. When deployed, the liner will regain loft and create an insulated cocoon similar to the Cold War setup. This method works far better than stacking heavy wool layers because it preserves trapped air, which is honestly the real key to staying warm. The Cold War liner stands as a testament to practical innovation, crafted not for glory, but for survival. It reminds us that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most enduring, and that the ingenuity of those who came before us still has much to teach, if we're willing to pay attention. Why this overlooked Cold War innovation deserves recognition. The Cold War liner represents a moment when practicality outweighed theory. Engineers designed something to keep ordinary soldiers alive in extraordinary conditions, and they succeeded through simple physics rather than complex manufacturing. Its effectiveness is why so many veterans still keep their liners decades later, long after their original gear has been discarded. It was affordable, nearly indestructible, quick to dry, and incredibly efficient. Those traits make it an enduring example of military ingenuity. If you want more deep dives into the forgotten field gear survival methods and engineering that shaped the modern world, make sure you subscribe to In the Beginning, share this video with fellow history enthusiasts, and help keep these hard-earned lessons alive.